King Solomon. It's a name that, well, it brings up images of incredible wisdom, maybe immense wealth. We all kind of have a picture in our heads. But when you dig into the historical accounts and the legends too, it's a much more complex story than just those simple ideas suggest.
Absolutely. Solomon's life wasn't just one static picture of a great king. It was really dynamic. You see this rise, incredible achievements, but also some pretty serious mistakes, and then maybe, just maybe, a path to redemption at the end. So our goal here in this deep dive is really to trace those big moments, the major shifts in his life. We'll be drawing on, well, quite a mix of sources to try and get a fuller picture.
It really is a mix, isn't it? You have bits that seem more historical and then these really deep-rooted legends. Each one gives you a slightly different angle on him. Okay, so where does this whole complex story actually kick off?
It starts, naturally, with his birth. He's the son of King David and Bathsheba, and even his names are significant right from the start. He was called Solomon, which means peace, but also Jedediah, beloved of the Lord. So David apparently really intended for him to be this child of peace, the one who would finally build the temple, something David himself wasn't permitted to do.
So right from the get-go, there's this built-in sense of destiny, like peace and divine favor all wrapped up in one person. But getting to fulfill that destiny, it wasn't exactly a peaceful path for him, was it?
Oh, definitely not. Securing the throne, that involves some pretty decisive moves after David died. Solomon had an older brother, Adonijah, who also had a claim. Solomon, well, he strategically took him out of the running. And it wasn't just Adonijah, he also dealt firmly with figures like Joab, David's very powerful general, and Shimei, someone linked to, let's say, past troubles for David. These early actions really showed what kind of ruler Solomon would be quite firm.
Right. It paints a picture of someone quite pragmatic, doing what needed to be done to secure power. But his authority wasn't purely political, was it? There's that very famous story about a divine encounter.
Ah, yes, the dream at Gibeon. That's absolutely central. God appears to Solomon, offers him anything he wants, and Solomon asks for wisdom, just wisdom to rule his people well. And God grants it. This act really establishes his reputation as this incredibly wise king. Some legends even add that angels gave him a sapphire and a ruby, symbols of his God-given authority over, the natural world, spirits, everything. Wow, a direct blessing like that. Yeah.
That sets a pretty unique tone for leadership. And this wisdom wasn't just an abstract thing, right? There are stories showing him using it, even early on.
Exactly. There are several tales highlighting his sharp judgment, even as a young man. One involves a tricky dispute about some pitchers of honey, where he cleverly figures out who stole some gold hidden inside. Another famous one is an inheritance case between three brothers. His solution was apparently so insightful it amazed everyone. These incidents really built up that legend of his incredible wisdom from a young age.
Okay, so he's politically secure, he's got this divine blessing, his reputation for wisdom is growing. The stage seems set for his biggest project, the one he's most known for, the temple.
Yes, building the temple in Jerusalem, that was the centerpiece of his reign, really fulfilling that divine mandate passed down from David. He needed massive resources, skilled workers. He got a lot of that through his alliance with Hiram, the king of Tyre. Tyre was a major power, lots of resources, skilled artisans. And interestingly, some traditions, some legends even say demons were involved in the building work.
Demons as construction workers, that's unexpected.
Compelled to work, supposedly, by Solomon's magic ring. It's a fascinating layer to the story.
So using demons.
Yeah.
Did that come with its own set of problems? I mean, managing that kind of workforce can't have been easy.
Well, the stories do mention challenges. There's one about a particularly nasty demon causing trouble, supposedly drinking the workers' blood. Another tale speaks of a point where the temple construction just stalled, couldn't get any higher for a while, so even with supernatural help, it wasn't straightforward.
It makes the whole project sound even more epic, blurring those lines between the earthly and the supernatural.
Yeah.
And this ring you mentioned, Solomon's ring, sounds like a key part of his power.
Oh, absolutely key in the legends. It's often described with 4 jewels, each granting him control over different things: spirits, birds, animals, the winds. He could supposedly understand animal languages, command demons for tasks, as we said. This mastery over both natural and supernatural realms really added to his unique, almost mythical status.
It's almost hard to imagine that kind of power. But his reign wasn't just about these grand constructions and magical items, right? He was also known for justice and diplomacy.
Definitely. He had a reputation as a just ruler. There are stories illustrating this, like a case between a snake and a farmer, or another complex dispute involving different animals, where his wisdom finds the fair solution. And on the diplomatic front, yes, he was active. Forging alliances was important. His marriage to the daughter of the Egyptian pharaoh, for instance, was a major political move in that era.
So he's juggling the spiritual side, the building projects, and the day-to-day ruling and diplomacy. And all this presumably led to a very prosperous time for his kingdom.
It seems so. The kingdom expanded. He collected tribute from many surrounding peoples. He set up important trade routes. Bringing in horses and chariots from Egypt was a big one, a sign of military might back then. And alongside the temple, he built this incredibly grand palace for himself, something to rival the splendor of other great empires. It all contributed to this image of immense power and wealth.
It really sounds like the absolute high point, the peak of wisdom, power, wealth. Everything firing on all cylinders. But, well, the story doesn't stay there, does it? Things take a turn.
They do take a significant turn. Despite his early wisdom, despite the warnings he apparently received, Solomon started to let things slide. He ignored divine commands about kings not amassing too many horses, for example. And critically, he married many, many foreign women, hundreds, according to the texts. And these wives, well, they brought their own gods and religious practices with them.
And introducing foreign gods into Jerusalem. That must have had consequences, right? Especially given his connection to the temple.
Huge consequences. The worship of idols started to spread. It wasn't just tolerated, it apparently began to infiltrate the city, even impacting the temple rituals. And the most troubling part in some accounts is that Solomon himself started participating in these foreign worship practices, a real departure from his beginnings.
Wow, that's a stark contrast to the young king asking God for wisdom. So what happened then? Did this loss of focus have divine repercussions?
The sources describe a definite withdrawal of divine favor. There are symbolic descriptions, like the smoke from proper offerings no longer rising directly to God, and God's judgment is pronounced. Because of this idolatry, Solomon would lose much of his power. And it's around this point in the narrative that the demon, Asmodeus, who we mentioned earlier may be helping with the temple, comes back into the story in a much more sinister way.
Asmodeus again. So from construction helper to agent of downfall.
That's how the legends frame it, yes. Asmodeus supposedly tricks Solomon, gets him to hand over that powerful ring, and then the demon takes Solomon's form, sits on his throne, rules in his place. Meanwhile, the real Solomon, he's cast out, stripped of everything, forced to wander as a beggar, completely unrecognized.
From the pinnacle of kingship to absolute destitution, that's an incredible fall from grace. What was that period like for him, wandering as a beggar?
It's depicted as a time of extreme hardship, hunger, humiliation. Imagine the man who commanded spirits now begging for scraps. He encounters people who knew him in his glory, but they don't recognize this broken man.
That must have been profoundly shattering. Did anyone help him? Did he find any kindness in that state?
There are stories of small kindnesses. One mentions an old man helping him, someone who, ironically, had benefited from Solomon's own wisdom in the past, but didn't realize who he was helping now. Later, he's even thrown into prison, which, might have been a harsh but necessary time for reflection, thinking about his choices, about justice, about God's will.
Prison for the former king. A pretty stark lesson in humility. It sounds like this suffering was almost preparatory, leading towards some kind of change.
It seems that way. The story suggests a gradual turning back, a repentance. There's a symbolic moment where his chains just fall off silently and he escapes. He then embraces humility fully, taking on simple jobs. He works as a sower, a mason, a shepherd, just a common laborer. And it's in this period, stripped of everything, that he apparently rediscovers his faith, finding deep meaning in the sacred texts, like the Torah and the Song of Songs.
So the fall led him back to basics, back to faith, through hardship and simple living. But he doesn't just stay a humble laborer forever, does he? He returns to Jerusalem.
Right, he eventually makes his way back, still unrecognized at first. But his innate wisdom starts to peek through. There's a story about him settling a dispute involving a hidden pearl, revealing the kind of insight only the true king possessed. This starts raising suspicions about the guy currently on the throne, Asmodeus.
So his wisdom kind of gives him away, even in disguise. How is the imposter finally exposed for good?
Key figures loyal to the true Solomon, like Benaiah and Zadok, come up with a plan. It involves the Sanhedrin, the High Council, and crucially, the real Ark of the Covenant. They perform a ritual. The idea is that the true Ark, the sacred one, would respond to prayer and ascend, while any false replica, like one Asmodeus might have made, would remain stuck on the earth. And that's exactly what happens. The deception is revealed.
A very dramatic, very symbolic unmasking using the holiest object. So Asmodeus is exposed. What then?
The demon is banished. Solomon is restored to his throne, and his first acts are apparently about setting things right. He gets rid of the idol worship that had crept in, and he publicly repents for his own failings.
A complete turnaround then, trying to undo the damage and make amends.
Yes, very much so. He reportedly takes actions like shutting away his many foreign wives and concubines, the sources of the idolatry, and he distributes much of his vast wealth to the poor as an act of atonement. His final years are portrayed as being focused on teaching the law, the Torah, and gaining a deeper understanding of life and death. There's even an encounter with Samael, the angel of death.
And there's one last interesting detail about his actual death, isn't there? Something about deceiving the demons.
According to legend, yes. He died while standing upright, perhaps leaning on his staff. This apparently fooled the demons he had control over. They thought he was still alive and supervising them, so they kept working on this mystical project, sometimes called the Invisible Temple, meant to last until the Messiah comes. A final act of subtle control, even in death.
Wow, what a life. It really does cover the entire spectrum, doesn't it? From this divinely chosen wise king building the temple, to a ruler led astray by wealth and foreign influences, falling into exile, and then finding his way back through repentance.
Exactly. It's this incredible story of contrasts. Unmatched wisdom and glory side by side with really significant human failings. But perhaps the most powerful thread running through it is that possibility of repentance, of turning back, even after falling so far.
It definitely leaves you with a lot to think about. The pull and the dangers of power, of wealth, the importance of staying grounded in faith, in humility, and maybe most of all, that idea that repentance can truly transform things. Lessons from Solomon that still feel pretty relevant today.